So, diving right in, the discussion centers on Cole Douglas Macgregor's take that a U.S. attack on Iran wouldn't just be a military maneuver, but could potentially spark a completely disastrous chain reaction, even something as massive as World War III.
Yeah, that's quite a statement. What's the reasoning behind that exactly?
Well, McGregor lays out that America's military action against Iran is doomed to fail on multiple fronts, not just in achieving its
Hmm.
tactical goals, but in destabilizing an already volatile region, which could trigger alliances and enemies to escalate quickly.
Right, so he essentially argues that the military might is outmatched by the geopolitical fallout. But can you break that down a bit more?
Sure, the idea is that if the US takes aggressive action, it will not isolate Iran on the international stage, as you might expect. Instead, regional powers and global players like Russia and China could step in to support or at least oppose America's agenda. It's like a domino effect where one aggressive move sets off a chain reaction.
I see. So the central worry isn't only about immediate military defeat, but about the broader strategic price tag.
Exactly. And McGregor also points out that Iran has built up its defenses over decades and is well prepared to reciprocate. There's a layered
Right?
strategy at play, a system where any unilateral move by the US could quickly become a multi front nightmare.
That really paints a grim picture. But, isn't there a counterargument that argues the US has enough power, technologically and militarily, to overcome these challenges?
Well, that's where McGregor is pretty skeptical. He suggests that while the US may have advanced hardware, the complexities of urban warfare, local insurgencies, and the unpredictable nature of state sponsored proxy conflicts make a straightforward victory extremely unlikely. It's like if you build the perfect car but then drive it through a maze of potholes.
That analogy really helps. But then, doesn't he also mention that such an attack might actually have the paradoxical effect of uniting rather than dividing dissent against the US internationally?
Yeah, absolutely. He argues that historical precedents show when a superpower launches such an aggressive campaign, it can backfire by rallying diplomatic and even covert
Right,
military
yeah.
support to its adversaries. Essentially, instead of being seen as a resolute actor, the US risks being painted as the aggressor on the world stage.
I mean, think about it. If other nations see a free for all on the horizon, they might mobilize out of self interest, right?
Precisely. And McGregor is very clear that once this begins, controlling the narrative and the escalation becomes nearly impossible.
Yeah,
It's like trying to hold water in your hands.
that's a powerful image. But don't you think that some critics might say he's exaggerating the likelihood of a full scale world conflict?
Yes, that's a point of contention here. Some argue that the global geopolitical system has enough checks and balances, like economic interdependencies and nuclear deterrence, that might prevent such an extreme outcome. However, McGregor counters by highlighting moments in history where miscalculations nearly led us into global war.
So he's essentially saying that the risk, even if not immediate, is too grave to ignore.
Exactly. And he digs into the complexities of modern warfare, a blend of conventional battles, cyber warfare, and asymmetrical tactics that can obscure who the real enemy is. This mix
Yeah,
makes any conflict precarious.
it's fascinating how he links the potential mishandling of the initial conflict with long term unpredictability.
Absolutely. And he suggests that the intentions behind the attack might be less about immediate outcomes and more about sending a political message, which only makes the escalation risk even higher.
That definitely sounds like a high stakes game where every move might be misinterpreted.
Exactly. And let's not forget the regional dynamics. In the Middle East, where loyalties are formed on a mix of ethnic, religious, and political grounds, any unilateral move by the US is bound to ripple out. Allies of Iran, including proxy forces, would likely escalate their involvement.
So it's kind of like lighting a fuse in a densely packed dynamite field. What seems contained could burst unpredictably,
Exactly. It's
right?
not just about Iran's military capabilities, but also about the regional allies and the whole network of geopolitical interests that come into play.
And if we extend that, it means even a misstep in one region could trigger backlash in another.
Yes, and what's more, he points to the risks of miscommunication and rapid escalation. In our interconnected arena, a single incident can snowball very fast. It reminds me of that old analogy. It's like pulling one thread in a tapestry and watching the whole pattern unravel.
That brings up an interesting challenge. Don't you think the US might be banking on being able to manage these narratives, especially given their global media reach and diplomatic channels?
That's true. The US certainly has strong strategic communication networks, but Macgregor suggests that under the intense pressure of war, those very systems might falter under conflicting messages and rapid developments. It's a scenario where preparedness on one side doesn't guarantee control over the narrative.
It almost sounds like a perfect storm. Advanced weaponry meeting chaotic international sentiment.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that he draws parallels to historical conflicts, warning that previous wars turned global when localized tensions were allowed to spiral.
Right?
There's a kind of inevitability in how these cascades occur if preemptive caution isn't adopted.
And this is where some might argue. Is it really as inevitable as he paints it? I mean, global interconnectedness could, in theory, allow for swift diplomatic resolutions before things get out of hand.
That's a fair critique. But Macgregor's stance is that the current geopolitical climate is especially fragile. The stakes are just too high, and the margins for error are incredibly slim. In his view, inaction or a miscalculated action could inadvertently lock the world into a conflict spiral.
So, while diplomacy exists, the combination of military posturing and rapid technological escalation makes the whole situation seem precarious.
Right, and he repeatedly emphasizes that an attack on Iran isn't a neatly contained military strike. It's a spark in a tinderbox, especially given the high tensions and mutual distrust that have been building over decades.
Yeah,
Every move is loaded, every decision carries an exponential risk.
that's really a sobering thought. It's almost as if any misjudgment could lead to a chain of events that no one can fully control.
Precisely, and that's why his argument is as much about strategy as it is about perception. It's not enough to just have the technological muscle. You need the geopolitical finesse to steer clear of pitfalls that would lead to uncontrollable escalation. And apparently,
Right.
he's not convinced that this finesse is in place.
It makes you wonder, though, if the risks are being truly heeded by policymakers, or if political pressures might override these cautious cautions.
That's a valid concern. There's always a gap between military strategy and political decision making, one filled with ambition, miscalculation, and sometimes overconfidence. In the heat of the moment, a calculated risk can shift into an uncontrollable predicament.
And that's where the notion of triggering WW3 comes in, a stark warning that goes beyond tactical failures to existential jeopardy.
Exactly. And it's that intensity, that potential for global catastrophe, which makes the argument so compelling and frankly urgent. It's a reminder that in these high stakes scenarios, every decision matters, a bit like walking along a razor's edge where a slight misstep could be fatal.
Yep. Wow, truly thought-provoking. It definitely adds a layer of gravity and caution to the whole debate around military intervention in such a volatile region.